Okay, we're live on this one. Give me 1 second. It's freaking out. Okay. You can talk to him because you're live.
Hey guys, sorry,
the
we're
camera.
trying to sync up a camera for Facebook Live and for YouTube Live.
Hold on.
Here,
Just talk to them on this
oh,
one.
Yeah.
Great start so far.
I know.
The
Because
camera
you weren't
freaked.
nervous enough to
Yeah,
start,
right.
right? Were you? Poor Will. He's such a good.
Sorry, y'all.
We are live for Jerry's Live. We are doing JL66 today. It is Artist Self-Improvement Series. We're actually going to go into how to photograph your art. And we've got Will Campbell, our trusty sidekick without the gold leafing.
Yes, no gold leaf around today.
No, I don't think there's anything that you can mess up with this. But he is our resident photographer. You've got actually, what, an MFA in photography?
Yes, I studied film and video, and then I got my master's in interactive media, and I focused on video and photography.
So you're actually getting it from somebody that, other than just Amy says. This is like Will actually says and has some papers that back it up. So
Don't just play one on TV.
No.
It's not letting it rotate for some reason.
Is that YouTube? So we're here on Facebook.
No, it's Facebook.
Oh, well, okay. Well, so we've got the YouTube
Special,
crew.
just for them.
I know. Whoa, what the heck? I guess you could tell them a little bit about yourself before we get Facebook,
Sure,
and then
yeah.
we'll have to unfortunately repeat.
We'll repeat everything, so
Yeah.
you get the double. So like Amy said, I do video and photography here at Jerry's Artorama. I'm the production manager for Burning Oak Studios, which is essentially the video department for Jerry's Artorama. So we do all the production, the product demos, and all the stuff on Jerry's YouTube channel, the after parties I help out with. I'm usually behind the camera. And we also do some photography with some products that come in, artwork that artists come through and do. Anytime Amy does some artwork for us, I'll try to do some photography of that for her and for you guys. So when we show up the photo at the end of a video, that's my work and Amy's work. So, and I studied at Elon, studied film and video. Then I went back, got my master's studying interactive media, and focused on camera work, so photography and video. I also dabble a little bit in time-lapse photography. It doesn't really apply for what we're talking about today, but it's a way to combine video and photos. Take a series of photos and turn them into a video. It's kind of neat.
Have we picked up our Facebook viewers now?
We just
All
picked
right.
them up.
So hey guys, we were having a little bit of technical difficulties for some reason with Facebook of all things, the one platform
One
we've been
consistent
on,
one.
yeah, all this time. So we apologize that we've just picked you up. People on YouTube, you're gonna have to bear with us for just a minute because we need to say hello. It's JL66 today. If you're playing along at home and you want to see some of the products that we're going to show you at the end of this, this is kind of a product light episode, as it were, because we really are focusing on the artistic self-improvement series, where you're going to learn how to actually take really good quality photos of your artwork with Will Campbell here, our special guest and our in-house head honcho of video and photography and all that. He's already introduced himself to YouTube. You want to do another?
The Cliff Notes version is
Yes.
I'm the production manager for Burning Oak Studios. I run all the video here and help out with a lot of the photography as well.
Yes. So, and he's excellent. Just besides that, he's just an all-around good guy. And we did already say to YouTube that there would be no gilding.
Yes.
Within a 50,
No gold leaf.
Within a 50-foot radius.
I'm not allowed on set when there's gold leaf around.
I know. There's like a gold leaf restraining order.
Finally paid that off. Though.
Yeah. Oh, well, see, well, that's why you had to do this
The debt has been
episode,
paid,
right?
yes.
That's the last step.
Yes.
If you didn't see that episode, that was what the wildest, most outlandish,
Most expensive art supplies.
last year, in 2017, and it was a hoot to do that episode. So we had a good time, and Will was in a tuxedo. So if you missed it, you may want to get some popcorn and watch that one because it was pretty fun. So
At least it's good for a laugh.
yes,
It was hilarious.
So all right, well, I am going to hand this over to Will. He is going to explain to us how to take great working photos of our artwork for self-promotion,
Yes.
for slides potentially. I don't think probably anymore there's the need for slides now that
Not
there's
so
all the
much.
digital
Yeah.
stuff. But even if you're just recording the artwork that you've created, even if you don't think maybe it's as good, even if you're like, well, it doesn't matter, I should just keep the artwork and then I'll have that record of it. You never know when there's gonna be a fire.
Yes.
You never know when maybe there's a leak in your roof and you get water damage, a tornado. I mean, you hate to say these kind of things, but I've been in situations before where like a sketchbook that I had some great drawings in that would have been fantastic to save got water damage. Where, you know, a part of a studio that I had leaked, molded and mildewed some canvases, where by the time I caught that, they were not where you could even take working photos from them anymore. Just to have a record of even from where you start quality wise to 5 years later, 10 years later.
That's something I don't think I touched on, but that's a great, another reason to photograph your work, is see your development from where you start, especially if you're starting a new medium. Start, you know,
Right.
This is the first oil painting I
Right.
did, this is the 20th oil painting I did,
Right.
the 100th, and see your progression along the way.
Well, and you know, there's some people that, especially that are just learning, that are practicing, that want to save money, sometimes will paint over old canvases.
Mhm.
That's a great way to still have a record of it.
Yes.
And your progress, but still utilize those canvases. So even if it's just for your own personal record, you still want to take really great photos of it to get the color right, to get the composition, to crop it in. If you're applying to be in a studio show, if you're even applying, like, say there's a studio in your town, working studios, and you want to get in and actually have a studio there, a lot of times there is a way you're gonna have to apply. You're gonna have to have digital photos or a portfolio and come in. You don't want a photo of, you know, your painting leaning against your kitchen table and your cat photobombing it. You would be amazed. Katie, from our self-portrait contest, has that not happened? We get, the criteria is that it has to be cropped to the edge of your artwork lines. We get part of the frames in there. Sometimes literally we have had hands, feet, cat faces,
Paintbrushes,
all sorts of
supplies,
stuff. Just, you can see out an open window. I mean, there's just so many. Don't do that to yourself, because we've actually seen some really exceptional artwork that we could not consider because it did not even follow that format. You're shooting yourself in the foot. If you've got great skills, but then this is the one thing where either you can't afford to get somebody to take the photos, or you just aren't gonna do them yourself, where it's going to shoot you in the foot time after time. So Will is gonna help make that so that you've got no excuse for that to continue any
That's right.
longer.
Yes. All right, so essentially, you know, the goal of, pretty much rehashing what we just said, the goal of taking a high quality photo of your art is to get a high quality, high resolution, and most importantly, an accurate
Yes.
digital replication of your work. So you spend enough time during the painting to get that exact shade of green you want. You want your photo to represent that exact shade of green as well. So it's not just getting it digitized and having a copy, it's getting an accurate copy as well. So essentially creating these digital images are like cheap plays, right? Those are,
Yes, those are fine art
Fine
print
art
of your
prints,
work, which
yes.
is done from, you know, really high quality, color corrected images that are
Yes.
digital.
and so other reason you might want to do it, you know, to make prints for yourself. A lot of people sell their artwork on Etsy. Ophelia will sell greeting cards of her artwork, and she puts those on Etsy. And so you want to be able to display that on your own website, have it for your personal records, just to see your development or what you've done.
Frida was actually, what was it, Redbubble that you did the little robin on? Took an image that she did and uploaded it to Redbubble. People can buy it that are looking. She did a little
Yes.
adorable, like, red-breasted robin. People can search that image pops up, they can use it to put on a phone case or a purse or a throw pillow. If you don't have good digital images that are color corrected nicely, no one's gonna buy that image, but that's like the cheapest way to sell your artwork.
Yes.
All you need is that good digital image of it, and you can make a lot of money off those platforms like that.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you want to enter some of our contests, like the self-portrait contest that you mentioned, it's imperative to have a good quality
Please.
picture. Yes. And also we touched on briefly for insurance purposes. If you are a person that sells your artwork and doesn't just do it as a hobby, when you do something, you now have a digital copy of your work that you can file for insurance in case anything happens, fires, floods, theft, whatever that may be. You would ultimately lose the original, but you have a copy of it for your records, for insurance purposes. And if you ever feel the desire to try and recreate that on your own again sometime, you can use that as a reference guide too. So many different reasons that you want to take good quality photos of your artwork. So the first thing I'll say is if if you have a scanner and your artwork style lends itself to a scanner, if it's flat, watercolor, you work on 8x10s primarily, use that. That's going to be the easiest way. That's going to be the fastest way. It's just put it in the bed, hit the button, you're good to go. You might have some minor editing to do, but anything will be minimal. Scanners are actually pretty good at detecting too the borders and such when you put something down, so it takes care of a lot of the editing on its own. The one thing I'll mention about a scanner is you want to make sure that it is at least 300 DPI. That's dots per inch. And so that is the computer 300 little tiny dots per inch that it scans. So the higher that number, 300, 600, whatever it is, the better, the more detail there is. It does create large file sizes, but that doesn't really seem to be a problem anymore. You can get very cheap hard drives that are several terabytes, and these things may be 20, 30, 40 megabytes. So that shouldn't be an issue as far as storing this digitally.
Well, that's still a very, even though there is some cost to that, that's still way cheaper.
Yes.
As for even just for insurance purposes.
Yes.
Than it would be to not have it.
To not have it.
Yes.
Yes. The other thing you'll need if you don't have a scanner is a camera. Now this is a DSLR. It's a higher quality camera, but you can also easily use a point and shoot camera, so you don't need to get the high-end equipment. And honestly, your phone will take decent enough quality photos these days. Maybe not if you're trying to sell prints, but at least for personal records and insurance purposes, your phone will work fine. And again, minimal minimal editing as far as that goes. Everything will have some post-production that you need to do just to get it to that next level. But everybody has a phone in their pocket with a camera on it pretty much these days. So again, no excuses not to be taking photos of your artwork. Within the phones, there are apps that will help you. Some of them cost money, but again, they're $2, $3, $4, $5 for an app. That's a lot cheaper than a several $100, several $1,000 camera, lenses, lights, all that kind of stuff. So consider that $5 an investment in your artwork and yourself. One that I wanted to recommend is Raw Plus. There is a free trial version of it. It'll let you take a couple hundred photos, I think. Maybe it's 100 photos on its own before you have to upgrade to that version. But again, it's not expensive. So, but that will let you not just press it on your phone and accept what it is, but it'll let you put in the settings and features I'm going to be talking about later that go along mostly with digital SLR cameras, as far as your white balancing, your ISO, your shutter speed, that kind of stuff. So
for non-camera people, you need to explain. Digital is obviously the D in it, but what does the SLR mean?
Single lens reflex.
Right.
I don't really know what that means either, but these are DSLR cameras. Before the digital one, when they had film, they were just SLR cameras.
Okay.
All right, so the next thing that you will need, and you need this, is a tripod. They do make tripod attachments for phones, so even if you're using your phone, get a tripod. It will help minimize any blur. It will help you in your composition, because even if you pull it out your phone and you think it looks good, but then you move at the last second, or when you press the button, it moves the phone. So a tripod will help you stabilize and get the exact composition that you're looking for. They also make specific photo tripods. So a lot of them, there's a difference between video and photo tripods. Photos often have what's called a ball head, which sits on a ball joint essentially, and it lets you move the camera around, and you can get just the right level, exactly as you need. If for some reason your artwork isn't level, you can adjust the camera to fit so it is level inside your camera, and that's important as well.
Yeah.
Yes. And they also need some sort of editing software. Now, the big guns are Adobe's Photoshop, Lightroom, Camera Raw. Those are, yes, they can be expensive. Some of them have subscription basis now, so you don't have to buy the entire Adobe package. I think you can get Photoshop for about $20 a month.
Oh, that's
and then
rather than buying a.
It used to be several $100s, and you have to buy the whole package.
Oh yeah.
But they also have other softwares. There's too many to name any particular ones, but even the built-in stuff on your phone will work all right for some basic editing. And you want to avoid programs like Instagram and Snapchat, because they have some editing capabilities, but you want to avoid those filters, because again, that's changing the actual accuracy of your artwork and the depiction of your artwork. So You're not looking for some fancy filters or anything like that. You want something that represents what you have put down on canvas or paper or whatever. And I guess I should mention that this is not just for 2D artwork.
Right.
A lot of this will apply to 3D.
Mhm.
So if you do sculpture
Definitely.
or mixed media that has some 3D elements,
Definitely.
most of what I'm saying will apply to that as well. Especially if you do sculpture, you might want to do multiple sides photographs, so dead on, rotate it from the side, so you can get all different
Yes.
angles of your artwork. But
Yeah, usually it's usually 2, but probably for the most part 3 shots of each piece, typically for
Yes.
sculpture.
Yeah. But again, the camera settings and the methods will apply to that as well. And if you want to get really fancy, you can get a photo booth and have it set up. We actually have something set up over here. We'll show you in a little bit. But that gets into the professional level. Again, you can get amateur level equipment that works and takes good photos, but it's a little more of a equipment investment. You'd have to get a photo tent, flashes, stands, remotes, timers, things like that. So it's a little more than just your phone. But if you're going to be doing this on a professional level and selling your work, it may be, again, an investment you're making in yourself and in your future and in your artwork. So
Even if maybe you were a part of like a studio co-op or collective, it's something where everybody could break that cost down and
Yes.
go in on it together
Yes.
to have it there for everybody to use.
yeah. So again, we'll show you, take a little field trip over to the green screen a little bit where we've got something set up, and I'll show you an example of how to take some photos of, with that full photo booth set up.
Field trip.
Yes. And even with that though, it does take a little bit of post-production and editing.
Mhm.
So even with the high-end professional equipment, you still got to take it into the computer. So it's never just click and you're done.
'Cause if
Now-
not, your competitor surely is.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Yes. All right, so I'm going to go into some of the aspects that go before you take the photograph. So you have your camera out, it's on your tripod. These are the things you need to consider before you press that button, before you click. So lighting is important. It is the most important thing in all photography. So, and video, it applies as well.
And speaking of lighting,
Yes.
and I just thought about this, when you're taking images of your painting, do it before you varnish, if you're going to do it with
Yes.
a gloss varnish.
I do mention that a little bit later, talking about glare, but yes, let's get that
that's
out there now.
Just,
Yes.
just with oil and acrylic paintings, I've seen so many people that take, are you waving or just, okay,
Well,
that's the
that
problem.
was a question.
Oh, yeah.
So you've answered that.
Yeah.
But also iridescent, glossy interference colors and stuff like that. People are
Those
asking
can sometimes
how
be
to
a
photograph
problem.
those.
It's good to, what I've always done is either used like a uniform kind of a satin on it if I need, like if it's really matte and then really shiny in some areas, like the dog that you did for me that time
Yes.
that was running on the beach.
I'd like to redo that.
No, that turned out great. I don't know how you did it, but it was, I use a gloss medium as I'm painting, but then parts of it were much more matte. So what I did was put a satin varnish on it so that at least it was the same sheen, so it would be easier, it wouldn't refract the light, as badly. But that's something to consider, doing, because just a high gloss is just gonna be a nightmare for somebody for you without camera experience to try to do something with. But even for a professional, it's very
Yes.
difficult. I'm sure you've
Yes.
had some people bring some stuff and it's like taking a flash picture in a mirror where it's just like
Yeah,
shiny.
it's difficult and sometimes more post-production, but you can do it, but ideally, take your photos before you add any
Yes.
sort of varnish. If you're at this point and you've already done all of your artwork and it's varnished and you want to go back and take photos, there are ways to work around it, but again, it's easier to just
Yes.
take the photo first and then do your finishing touches. So yes, lighting is crucial. It is the number one thing in photography.
Yep.
That's essentially what photography is. It's the sensor inside of a camera absorbing the light and processing that. So you want good light around you. Now here in the studio we have a mix of fluorescent and LED lights. Ideally you have one light source, or one light color at least.
Mhm.
I'll get into color temperature in a little bit. You can use natural light. Some people like to go outside and take their photos. Cloudy or overcast is great too, so you don't have the sun glare. It's not reflecting off of anything. It's not making certain colors look brighter, but natural light is a great way to take your photos as well.
you know what I've always done, there's a park across the street with these huge, like 100-something-year-old oak trees.
Yes.
Doing them on a sunny day, but in the shade of that, because it still
Yes.
gets decent light under there, but you don't get that direct light that's gonna mess everything up.
Yeah, so in the shade would work great.
Yes.
Yes. You want to use indirect light, and what I mean by that is you don't want to point, if you have a lamp here, you don't want to point it directly at your artwork because you will see that. It will be reflected. What you'd like to do is bounce it or reflect it off some surface, so the ceiling or nearby wall. If you have a reflector, some people just use white foam boards.
Yes, that's what I-
That's a great way to reflect light as well. So have the light near the artwork, but not directly on the artwork. You also want even lighting. So if you have a light over here, you might want one on this side as well. So that way you're not casting any shadows. This side of the painting is just as lit as this side. You know, here in the studio, we have lights kind of in even numbers spread around us. So not one side is lit and the other is dark. So even lighting is important as well. So whatever lights you choose to use, just make sure there are enough of them. I've seen people use the work lights that you can buy at, you know, at a hardware store that, you know, clamp on and kind of shine there. Those work just as well. You can use house lamps. You can use whatever it is, but make sure there's enough of it. And ideally, you want them all to have the same color temperature light bulbs. So if you have 2 or 3 identical lamps, use those rather than mix and match,
Right.
if possible. You also want to watch for shadows. So it may be, you know, watch for yourself casting a shadow, the tripod, anything else in the room that you might be unaware of at first. It's easy to overlook some of those details. So, and again, maybe you can edit that out, but it's not easy. It's time consuming, it's tedious, so let's just get the photo right and have minimal editing. So that would be the best way to do it. Any questions on the lighting so far?
We did have a question about encaustics and photographing encaustics.
That's an interesting question. They're asking about encaustics and how to photograph encaustics.
I don't think I've ever photographed encaustics.
I think
but
it's just gonna be the exact same rules apply
Yeah.
as like oil paintings
I
and
don't think
stuff.
so.
Just don't buff it beforehand. A lot of times encaustics will get that haze on them, and if you let them kind of get that haze on them after they've been sitting a while, it makes it a little bit easier because you won't see the reflections and stuff in them as badly, and then you can always buff it out later.
Unless you need to see that depth up under something.
Yeah.
Like if you part of the work, you know what I'm saying, where some people do the embedded things,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to see that.
Sometimes the
depending on
haze
how
just
hazy it
isn't,
gets.
yeah, sometimes you need just enough to knock that sheen. It's like there's that sweet spot in between
Yes.
the two that you can do it.
Yeah, you can buff it partially and
Yeah.
not get where it's that.
Yeah, not so you can't see it,
Yes.
but so it's enough to
Yes.
knock the shine down.
And I will mention a little bit later about some things you can do if you're getting some glare or reflection off of lights. So, don't know if that'll always work for encaustics, but you know, it's worth a try, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So
One more-
moving.
oh,
Oh yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
One more
Yeah.
question about lighting. Is it best to use the daylight bulbs?
There's no best as far as that goes, as far as using daylight bulbs versus anything else. You're going to set your camera to match the light that it puts out. That is called white balancing, sometimes color correction. As long as they're consistent, you don't have one fluorescent bulb and one daylight
Yes.
balance bulb. That doesn't work very well. It's mixing those color temperatures, but daylight works just as well as any other time because you're going to tell your camera what to look for. All right, so moving on to some of the camera settings and how that camera receives that light. There are 3 main ways that a camera like this, or any camera really, captures the light. And that's your f-stop, or your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. Now back in the days of film, the ISO was known as your film speed, and it's essentially how sensitive the film was to light. And you'd have numbers like 100, 200, 400, 800. The lower numbers, the 100, would be for sunny days, lots of lighting, and then the higher the numbers, the 400, 800, that's for lower light situations, or if you're
Or
indoors.
what, faster speed.
Or-
to-
or, yeah.
Taking action, which
Yes.
clearly we don't want that to be the case
Yes.
with taking pictures of artwork.
Yes, you should not be dealing with movement
No,
in
no,
this
no.
situation. So, yeah. Your f-stop or your aperture, that's going to be a number on your camera that's 3.2, 3.5, 4, 4.5. That is essentially how wide the camera lens opens up. So every time it takes a picture, it opens and closes, and you're telling it how wide or how small to open up. Obviously, the wider it is, the more light that comes in. But that will also affect your depth of field and a few other things that don't necessarily apply to what we're doing right here because we have one subject.
Mm-hmm.
But you do get a sharper, more crisp image somewhere in that middle zone. So you don't want to be on the low end or the high end of your f-stop. And the lower the number, the wider the aperture opens. So 3.2, 3.5, 4, those are pretty wide. And I think most cameras will go up to 22, and that's teeny tiny little hole. And it's hard for a lot of light to come in. So ideally you want to be in the 7.1 to 11 range. And you can adjust some of the other settings. If it still looks a little dark, you can adjust some other settings to get that to where you want to be. Your shutter speed is going to be how fast that hole opens and closes. So f-stop determines how big, shutter speed is how fast. Now you'll see in some numbers that they range from 1 second, that's forever in photography. Usually going to be working with tenths of a second, hundredths of a second, that kind of stuff. So 30 to 200, so 1/30th to 1/200th of a second is going to be, again, that sweet spot that you're working with. So you have quite a range there, but if you're at f.8 and you like that f-stop and it's looking good, but it's still not enough light, you can work with your shutter speed and maybe use a slower shutter speed, maybe in the 30, 60, around there, and see how that looks.
And not to interrupt you, but not to worry about this. This is like the part where I'm hearing numbers and the person that hates math in me is like, we're gonna put notes up.
Yes.
Online tomorrow. Will's gonna send me this and we'll put the notes up in the Jerry's live group, our private Facebook group. If you're not a member and you want the notes, join that, because we post, usually if we've got show notes, we put those in either that night or the next day. So these notes that he's got are in here with the camera settings and all that stuff and kind of where those sweet spots are.
Yes.
So don't panic either like scrambling to write this down or going, I'm gonna have to watch this 5 times to get all this information, and then just, this is still very important to you. You wanna learn this stuff. Don't let the scary sound of the numbers kind of like phased you out or make you just kind of close down. This information will be here for you. So just throwing that out there.
And a lot of this applies to the DSLR camera, and if you wanted to use like that RAW Plus app on your phone to get these settings, because I don't know about Androids, but I know iPhones, the built-in camera does not have these sort of settings, but there are apps that will let you do it, and it lets you fine-tune how you take your photographs. And I encourage you to not to try and experiment with some of these. Get away from that auto mode, that little green square on your camera for auto. You won't learn unless you try. So that's always a good backup, or if you need something quick. But if you want to learn and grow in photographing your artwork, these are the settings and the things that you'll have to consider as you start to move forward in that direction.
Well, the beauty of this is because it's digital now, not like it used to be, you're going to instantly see whether it's successful or not.
Yes.
So you can actually make corrections on the fly to this stuff, where back in the day, I remember having photography in high school, and I'm like, was kind of chuckling when you're talking about the f-stop and stuff, and just remembering going in and spending all that time developing pictures, then going, with some of them. Yeah, but I mean, that was a much longer learning process, because the time that it took to take the image, then actually get the image back to know where to then correct it.
Yes.
This is like instantaneous and amazing to be able to have this ability now.
To be able to just click and then look and say,
Yep.
Got to change a few settings, make a few adjustments, then take another one, take 10, take 30, 50 if you need.
Yeah, and
just to
then
get it right.
delete, not have to go print them out.
Yes.
Back in the dinosaur days.
I did some film developing. Yeah, it's still a little different.
Yeah.
The ISO is, again, it's no longer the film speed, but it is the sensitivity of the sensor within the camera. And the lower the better. So if ideally, your ISO at 100 is the sweet spot. That will create the sharpest, most crisp image that you can. If you need to bump up to 200, maybe 320, go ahead. I wouldn't go much higher than that. And some of these are built into I can't just pick a number and dial it in. There are steps that are built into your camera. And do not use your camera's flash. So this doesn't even have a flash. You can get it as an add-on. You don't want to use it, your point and shoot or your phone, turn it off. Do not use a flash. The light is too close to your artwork. It will just, everything you've worked on and getting those settings right, it will blow it out. It will change your white balance color. It will reflect back, you will get glare everywhere, it will look awful. Do not use the camera flash. Do not use the camera flash. I need to say that one more time. Do not use it. You can't even edit around that sometimes.
No,
It just ruins
no.
the photographs, so you start over.
Which luckily, these are digital, you see it when you look at it and go,
Yes, yeah.
remember what Will said, don't use the flash. Don't.
You know how many times I've used my phone and then you press the button and then that little light comes on to do that pre-flash?
Yes.
Flash, you're like,
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so turn that off. All right, the next, any questions, I think, on the camera settings?
No,
Good.
but
But,
we did get a question asking the most neutral time of day to take a picture with natural light.
it's actually a little bit in the afternoon.
That's what I was
So
gonna say, like,
that depends, if it's
that-
summer or,
12 to 2, depending on where you're at.
yeah, actually you want to avoid high noon when it's straight up ahead, but,
Yeah.
2 to 4-ish is probably ideal. In the summer, you get a little, it doesn't get dark till
That's true.
8, 9 o'clock, depending where you live, so you have a little bit of extra time. When you get that 4 or 5 o'clock and the sun's starting to go down, in
Yeah,
video, we
and-
call that the golden hour. Everything glows.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
again, that's changing the colors. That's changing how the colors being reflected back into the camera. So it may look pretty, but it's not going to be that accurate representation that you're looking for. So early afternoon. That helps. All right,
Awesome, thank
so,
you.
yes, moving on to the white balance. Now this is important on how the camera recognizes the colors from your artwork. So every light puts out a different color temperature. So fluorescent bulbs, tungsten bulbs, the sun, daylight, it all has a different color temperature, and you need to tell your camera what your setting is, what your surrounding is, and how to interpret those colors. So if you had in the incorrect settings, some things might look a little orange or a little blue. That's the white balance. And actually, I have a great example I can show you.
Leave it to prepared Will.
So I think we've all seen this drawing that Amy did of the elephant.
There, slide it over
A little bit. So this is obviously the original artwork and the photo that I took. Well, that's not important. What I want you to see is the white balance. Yeah. So this is the same photograph, just white balanced differently. So this one we have, it's a little warm. You can see it's on the orange side. This is a little bit cool. It's on the blue side. A little bit on the.
Yeah.
I overdid this for dramatic effect,
Yes.
but I want you to see that this in the middle is what we're looking for. You can see the difference. So this middle one was white balanced properly. These two were not. So white balancing is important. And even sometimes to the naked eye, you might look at this on your computer, you're like, yeah, that looks all right. But then compare it to the actual artwork. That's going to be the actual representation, not just what you think looks good or looks all right or looks neat or pretty. What is it compared to the actual artwork? All right.
We've had some people asking about photographing watercolors. Is that what's going to help make the watercolor paper white? Because they said they're photographing and it's looking really gray or it's looking another color.
Yes. So the white of the watercolor paper should be your basis for white. Now, in DSLR cameras and in certain apps, you can customize the white balance. You can dial it in. It's measured in Kelvin. You'll see a K, and it ranges typically from somewhere around 2,000 to about 8,000. It goes above and below that, but that's the range you'll see in photography. And if you want to, you can just start moving it over 100 at a time and see what looks natural, what looks good. When in doubt, use the auto function. Use the auto white balance. It's probably going to be a pretty good representation. The cameras, the sensors, even on your phones or in here, it does a pretty good job of recognizing your surroundings, the color temperatures, and makes that correction. So if you're consistently in the same environment too, if you have a room that you do photographs in with the same lighting, that shouldn't change. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And if you have something like white, stark white watercolor paper, do a test with your camera before you put any paint down and see if you can kind of dial that in and see, you know, what you're working with in that lighting situation. But again, one room to another, one light bulb to another, it will vary. So you want to do that between each photograph if it's in a different setting. If you have the same booth and you're just swapping them out, it won't change much. But
Well, then there's also the issue with, it may take what it actually sees, but because you've got, like, if you've got a warmer colored paper and you paint with cooler colors, it makes it look more orange to me, or even kind of more yellow, like creamier and stuff, because just in your mind, so sometimes it is what it is, and it's not necessarily because I've seen that with other people's work, where it's like, even looking at it, it doesn't look like the same paper that they did it on, but it's because of the colors that they've used. So some things you can't, like, watercolors I think are the hardest for that, because you tend to leave paper showing, where other things you paint over the entire surface.
sure, yeah.
So I think that makes it trickier in some senses, because to you it looks really like this, when really that's not how, if that makes sense, not how it looks.
Yes, yeah.
So.
And just to throw out more numbers at you. Again, dial in what looks like for your situation, but your common tungsten and halogen bulbs are going to be around 3200 Kelvin. Fluorescent bulbs are about 4500, and sunlight, daylight outside, is about 5500. So you can kind of use that to, if you're trying to dial in, it's a good place to start and then kind of adjust from there. If you're outside and it's bright and sunny, and you adjust your white balance to 5500 Kelvin, it looks great, and then a cloud comes overhead, that's going to change. So just keep that in mind. Anytime your lighting changes, your white balance will change. But when in doubt, use the auto function. It's not always perfect, but it's a great starting point, especially if you're new to light balancing and want to just learn how to do it. Also, a lot of cameras will have, even on point and shoots, might have different modes. So they'll say tungsten light, daylight, cloudy, shade. So go through those settings and just see what looks good and what looks natural. It's also great to have, you know, if you can, the artwork, the original artwork compared to a photo, a printout maybe that you did, so you can kind of see how that camera is interpreting that.
Yeah, when they do G-Clays, they do that. They usually keep the artwork so that they
Yes.
can actually do the compare and contrast to change it if need be.
And if you're a little bit off in post-production, you can change your white balance and tint a little bit too. So once you take the photo and you get back into the studio or on your computer and you realize your white balance is a little off, you can make those changes. But ideally, again, we're trying to get the best photograph in the camera first and then worry about the editing later.
Well, my question was, do the phone apps help with adjusting the white balance before shooting, or is that post-photo adjustment? But apparently it's both.
It's both,
Yeah.
yes. Ideally, you get it as you take the photo. And I think, you know, your standard iPhone built-in camera is going to do the auto setting. I don't think you can change that. But again, if you're exploring some of those apps that let you kind of manipulate the photos, that Raw Plus I was playing with earlier today, and you can go through the presets, because tungsten, cloudy, shade, those are kind of common presets because they're common color temperatures on that range from 2000 to 8000. But you can also just dial it in yourself and just kind of see what works for your studio and your setup. All right. Yes.
We had a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to go over it in a little bit, but Natalie had a question about like zoom, digital versus optical, like if one of them's better.
Yes, I talked about that in a little bit, but
Okay.
I will say, if you have a lens like this and you can zoom in like this, that's fine. Still, you want to be somewhere in the middle. If you get on either end of the extremes, you get a little bit of lens distortion. That's being pretty picky, and most people won't see it with the common eye, with the common naked eye. But again, if we're going for perfect, you want to be somewhere in the middle. Do not use digital zoom. That it will create some noise and effects on your image, and it will show it. Do not use digital zoom. If you need to, move closer or further away. Move physically closer away from the artwork. So again, with if you're using your phone, I would not zoom in at all. Just move the phone closer or further away. You get a little bit of range with lenses like this, but again, and if you are using lenses, don't use a wide angle lens. If you've ever seen that fisheye look where everything's kind of, blows out to the side, that will distort your artwork. And again, your edges will start to curve.
It'd be like on a realtor, like showing the house pictures. Where
Yes.
It's like You're like, oh my God, that kitchen looks huge, and then you realize the kitchen chair looks like it's about this wide.
Mhm.
And then
Oh,
you're
really?
like,
It's like
oh
this?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Or any music video from 1999.
Yes.
that too.
Uh,
I can't stand the rain.
So no wide angle lenses, no lens distortion, that kind of stuff. Do not use digital zoom. So I mentioned that a little bit later, but that's pretty much it as far as zooms go. It's easy to move further, physically closer or further away. That's probably the best way to do it. Also, you want to make sure that you have a clean background when you're taking your photos. If you're not using a photo tent or a photo booth or something professionally for that, if you have it hanging up on a wall and you want to take a photo, make sure there's nothing else around, ideally. So if I was going to take this photo, I would take it out of the frame first of all, but I would want it on a solid neutral color background like this is. I would not want anything like this. It's very chaotic, distracts in the background. It makes editing a little bit more difficult as well.
Yes, and taking it out of the frame where there's glass. We
Yes.
had those in the self-portrait contest, Katie.
I know.
Where you could see the glass. You could see.
That's
some
my favorite.
reflections of
You could see the
people.
reflections of the people.
Reflections, yeah.
Reflections are hard, but
Yes.
they make it even harder when you leave the glass
Reflection
in.
of people, of equipment, glare from the flashes, so take it out of the frame before you photograph. Yes. Ideally, again, like I said, solid colors. If you have just a white wall or a space in your house, if you wanted to hang something to take a photo and there's nothing else around, no other photographs, just get a neutral, boring background because that's going to make the photograph stand out and pop a little bit as well. I think that's pretty much it on the background. So now that's everything that you need to do before you take the photo, right? So you haven't even clicked it yet. But these are all important things to consider.
Yes.
So now, let's say you're set up. You've got all your settings dialed in. It looks great. You're white balanced. Your f-stop set. Everything's ready to go. You're ready to take the picture. What you need to consider next is your composition, and that is how everything looks within the frame. Now, a lot of DSLRs have bigger screens on the back that help you, take a generally good details.
Note to
I
self.
don't even be able to see that, but you can kind of see what's going on around in there.
Katie, can you see okay?
So
I don't really-
don't need to see what's going on. I'm just saying that cameras will have viewfinder, LCD screens like this, so you can see what's going on. I actually say don't use them. Ideally, use the eyepiece if you can. It seems a little old school,
Yeah,
getting down there
that's-
and something like this, but that's going to be a little bit more accurate of a composition. It's not a digital replication of what the camera's seeing. It is actually what the camera and the lens are seeing. Also built in on a lot of cameras is a grid. So you can't see it, but when I look through here, you see lines and grids that help you level things out so you can make sure that you're not taking the photo like this or like this. Because that's going to save you again in post-production. That's going to be key is having a nice, even
Here.
composition.
Instagram has it when you're doing stuff like that, and a lot of the apps actually have it as an option as well.
Yes.
Yes, Natalie.
Ian asked, what do you think of taking a photo in HDR style?
So HDR is high dynamic range, and it will let you take bright brights and dark darks and kind of merge them all into one photo. And I haven't come across a time that I've really needed that in artwork. If you are painting with a lot of contrast, maybe you could try doing that. I've personally never attempted doing an HDR with separate photographs. Sometimes your phone has an HDR mode and it kind of does that automatically. Give that a try. It's not going to hurt anything. It just adds an extra layer for you to worry about taking into post-production. But you will get brighter brights and darker darks in the same photograph. So usually when you take it, it can only, if this is the light scale, your camera can only recognize certain amounts of things. So by taking a picture here, here, and here, and then merging them, you can get that entire light field in one photo, and that's what HDR is. But you may not really need that as far as what we're doing, just photographing your artwork. Hope that helps. So back to the composition, you want your lens, your camera, your phone, whatever it is, to be centered with your artwork. So let me pull this over real quick. I have a panel on an easel. Something else to consider is if if you are shooting on an easel, you get a little bit of a lip there. You have lip covering here, so you're not getting the full artwork. So I just grabbed a block panel here, and you can prop up the panel here. And now when I take the photo, I'm still gonna get this part of the panel in there, but I can edit that out. I'm not missing anything. So as you take, let's see if I can angle this a little better for you guys. As I'm taking the photo, I want to be center of the lens to the center of the artwork. If you're down here to the side or anything, it's gonna look a little bit skewed. And again, that's not gonna be accurate representation. You spent your time getting the perspectives right in your artwork, get it right in the photograph.
Good point.
So, yeah, so I'm just showing you holding the camera, but I'll talk about going to a tripod next. But you want the camera to be dead center. If you're using your phone, if it's a landscape, shoot a landscape like this. If it's a portrait, shoot like that. That will help get the most artwork in the frame as possible. So you want to fill your screen, your frame, your camera lens with as much of the artwork as possible. You want as little outside as you can. And again, that will help with help in post-production, and that way when you do crop down, you don't have to crop down to something like this. You can crop a little bit, and then you have a higher quality image in the end. A little more detail as well. Do not put the artwork flat on the table if you can help it. Now I'll do that sometimes here, but we have studio lighting that's kind of meant for that a little bit, but it's not ideal. Not only is it hard to see what you're doing when you're taking a photo like this straight down, you can stand up and look around, look over it. It's going to be a little bit harder. You're going to more likely get shadows cast down onto the artwork. So if you can, prop it up, hang it on the wall, find somewhere that you can kind of stand it up on its own. Easels like I just had are great because they can stand up and down. Sometimes display easels will lean back a little bit, so they might be great for displaying, but not always for photographing. So again, you want it as level, straight up and down as possible. All right. And like I said, make sure the artwork takes up as much of the picture as possible without cutting anything out,
Yes.
too. Yes. So I've done some photos before, and then you realize you're missing part of the photo, or the signature even at the very bottom. So you make
Right.
sure you get, it's better to have a little bit extra to crop out than cutting off part of the artwork. And again, these are things you can take a photo and check again really quick and see, oh, I wasn't level. Oh, I cut off the signature, do it again. Use a tripod. I mentioned this earlier. There's no reason not to. It's going to help you take a much more stable photo. Once you set up your composition, it's set. Nothing's going to move. You don't have to worry about you moving or wobbling around. It's just going to produce a better quality. There's no blur. And you can get photo-specific tripods. They're not expensive. They have expensive tripods with all the bells and whistles and things like that. You don't need it. Even like worst case, if you're just at home using your phone, you can prop it up against something, stack some books up on them and set it down. But you don't do it by hand if you can help it. So use something to help stable the camera. And
We sell some pretty inexpensive tripods, don't we? We have a couple of them on the website that are just not very expensive at all and will work just fine for what you needed to do.
And most cameras have this thread at the bottom. This is a pretty common thread for tripods and plates. They do make iPhone and smartphone attachments for easels too, so no matter what you're working with, you can find something that'll work on a tripod. Any other questions at this point? Slowly moving on. Yes.
What lens do you use on what looks to be a 5D?
Yes, this is a 5D Mark III. I currently have a 24 to 70 millimeter lens. I'd probably stay, if I can, around that 50 millimeter mark. But you have some wiggle room as far as that goes. But any lens that you have will work unless it's a fisheye lens or wide angle lens, because that will distort your image. And again, I mentioned the sweet spot's right in the middle. If you're down by 24 millimeter, you might start to see a little bit of curve around the edges. Again, I think that takes the fine-tuned eye to notice some of those things. You might get a slight vignette around some of the edges. If you notice that, change your zoom. If you can't for some reason, it's stuck, it's broken, but you love the lens, but it won't get off of that, you can always back up a little bit and make sure that the artwork is a little more centered in the photograph. But whatever lens you have is the lens that'll work. So there's no specific photography lens to use for artwork. Use a tripod.
And no flash.
And no flash. In conjunction with the tripod, if you can, use a remote or a timer. iPhones have built-in timers. A lot of cameras do, so that way you can run around and get in the Christmas photo with the family. So 2, 3, 5, 10-second timers, or remotes that will plug in and let you press it separately. Because you may not realize it, but when you press that button, you're moving the camera a little bit. Even if it's stable on a tripod, there is a little bit of wiggle room. So having a remote or setting the timer, pressing it and stepping away and let it do its thing on its own, that will minimize any sort of blur or movement in the photograph and keep your composition how you arrange. And lastly, very important though, is the focus. You want to make sure your camera and your artwork is in focus. Again, when in doubt, use the autofocus. It's great. It recognizes, especially in 2D artwork, it can recognize the artwork and focus for you. As a professional photographer, I hate autofocus. That's just a personal thing. It works great as a starting point sometimes. But again, if you want to get serious about it, use the manual focus, adjusting it yourself. There's often guides inside the camera when you're looking through that there's little lights, and when something's in focus, it'll beep, beep, or flash red. So there's guides to help you get that focus, even if you are going manual. And if you are using your LCD screen, they often have a zoom feature where you can zoom in 5 times, 10 times, set that focus to exactly how you want, and then zoom back out and take the picture. So that zoom is not for zooming in to take the photo, it's just zooming in for focus assist, essentially. I don't know how many times that I've had to redo some photos because they weren't in focus, or especially with sculpture and 3D artwork. Something may be in focus, but the back of it's not, or the side of it's not. So make sure the main feature of your artwork is in focus. And that's something so easy to forget when you have to worry about all these other settings. But you can have everything right and everything perfect, but a blurry photo isn't going to do you any good.
Right.
So, it seems small, but it is probably one of the most important things, besides not using the flash. As far as glare, there are a few tips you can do to work around glare that you're getting or reflections off of your artwork. Like we said, if you work in oils or acrylics, varnish after you take the photos. Do any sort of additives after you take the photo. That will help cut down glare and reflection tremendously. Take your artwork out of the frames. The glass will reflect and cause glares. And sometimes when you're, depending on your lighting situation, if you just can't help it, or it can be minor adjustments. So if you're getting a glare off this, obviously, let's pretend this is not in the frame. But move it an inch to the right, see if you still get glare. Tilt it up a quarter inch like that, see if you still get glare. Minor changes like that can remove that light. It's just how the light's reflecting off of it into the camera. So if you can move it a little bit, the camera or the artwork, that may help. So it's just a trial and error thing at that point. So take your photo, see, it didn't work, move it a little bit more, see what works and what doesn't. Take multiple shots. So this is something we talked about, the glory of digital photography. If you have any memory card is going to be able to hold a decent amount of photos. Take multiple shots. Even if you think all your settings are perfect and you think you're taking 5 of the same shot, take multiple shots. You may not have noticed the fly that flew by and got in the background.
Yes.
You may have noticed the dog hair that was in the air, or dust, or whatever it is.
Yep.
Take multiple shots of everything. So once you get your settings, do it.
Or if you're outside and suddenly the sun's not behind the cloud and then suddenly it is behind the cloud.
Yes, or moving.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. If you are outside, the sun moves constantly. 3 o'clock is gonna be different than 3:30, which is gonna be different than 4 o'clock. So just take multiple shots of your artwork when you're all set up, and continually go back and check your composition, your white balance, if you're outside especially. Something else you can do that's kind of fun is, it's called bracketing. Once you have your camera set up in the settings you like, take a photo or 2 or 5 or 10 or 50. Change the settings a little bit and see how that looks. So you have something set up, you take a photo, maybe bump up your f-stop 1 notch, take another photo, put it down 1 notch, take a photo. That's how you do HDR, high dynamic range photos, manually, by taking several photos, merging them together with the same composition, different settings. But you may find that something looks great in your viewfinder as you're playing them back, but on the computer it looks a little bit different. So getting a range of options is
So
never hurt.
don't take 5, look at them, and then delete all of them but 1.
Yes.
Take them, keep them. You made 1. Those other ones.
Yes. And it'll provide you different options in editing. Again, there may be something that happened that you didn't see during the actual photography that you picked up on the computer screen once it's a little bit bigger. And there's no reason not to. Your memory cards will hold it. You can buy bigger memory cards if you're running out. Yes.
On that note, Ian was asking if push came to shove and you were using film, what kind of film would you use?
Whatever you can find.
No. I was gonna say,
Yeah.
Whatever isn't out of date and
Yes.
unprocessable anymore.
It's been about 10 years since I shot on film. I think I was just using Kodak. It was black and white, so I never developed or took color photos on film. But if you have an option, go with that lower ISO number, get the 100, maybe 200 speed film, because that will be a little less grainy, I suppose. It's meant for you'll get a crisper image, I think, if you have that. So whatever.
You're not taking photos of anything that's going to potentially move, so it's not a.
Yes. Yeah.
It's okay to.
Wherever film is sold.
Where is that? Have you just online? I don't know where
Maybe,
I've
I
seen it
guess.
last.
Yeah. When you find that out, Ian, let us know. because-
I still have an old SLR. That would be
Yes.
kind of funny. If it works.
All right, the next step, so after you've got everything done, you photographed it, you used your tripod, you did not use your flash, you're happy with the photos that you've taken, then you move into the editing part. But I think before we get into the editing and stuff on the computer, I'll take you guys over to see the photo booth that we have set up. Yeah, so you can kind of see what a professional photo booth looks like and how I do some of the artwork that we photograph here in the studio. Ready for a field trip, Katie?
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Don't mind the mess, people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. This is
This is the
reality
studio.
outside of the.
You coming,
outside
Amy?
of the- Yeah, I'm coming.
Follow Will.
So I got everything turned on, and we'll do some sample photos.
I think stay back here. I'll be in the way otherwise. Whoop, whoop.
So this is the photo booth that we have set up for this piece of artwork. Some of the equipment, if you want to go this route, we have not only the lights, the photo tent, the table to set it up on, stands for the lights. I went fancy and got a monitor to look at rather than using just the small screen to look at the photographs afterwards. So this is a pretty elaborate setup. But again, if you want to do serious professional photographs and you're selling these or making prints, this may be something you want to invest in. It doesn't have to be this exact setup, but there are similar setups to this that don't break the bank, that you can still kind of get your feet wet in this kind of product photography and artwork photography. So the photo tent is used to, I said you wanted a plain neutral background. It helps create that for you. So from us on the green screen, it wouldn't have been too bad, but you also get a little bit of green reflecting back. This prevents a lot of that. It prevents shadows and glare coming from different directions. The photo tent will actually, it's made of a soft fabric. It will diffuse the light coming in, so it softens it a little bit. So there's still enough light, but it's not very in-your-face, bright, reflection kind of light. So it's also indirect, like I said. The bulbs and the flashes are going up and out into the umbrella, and the umbrella is casting light back down. So that's a lot to go through. But in this setup, and I have mine, everything kind of plugged into the timer here so I can kind of change things around. I don't have my remote set up, so, shame on me, but if I had that set up, I click, it's gonna flash, so, great.
Right. Yeah.
And here we go. So now I can see with this monitor the photograph that I just took, and I can see, maybe I want to change, it's not fully level, or I'm getting some glare on here, and I can fine tune the flashes, their power, if I want to make it brighter or a little softer. I can make that decision there. If I like this, again, I'll take 4 or 5 of the same photo, change the settings a little bit, take 4 or 5 more, and then go into the computer to see what we're working with. And even though it's in the white photo tent, it's not a perfect background. You can see a little bit of the crease over here. I don't know if that's coming through on the phones, but you do see a little bit of the background of the photo tent. However, this is significantly easier in editing to just remove and kind of crop around the photograph
Oh, yeah.
and not have to worry about, your cat back here or other paintings around the side or, your art
You
supplies.
say that, and I was doing this at home one day, and the cat crawled in the photo tent.
Yes. Well, I can't help it. The cat is in.
She's
the
like,
photo tent. So
she
even
thought it
though
was her
it's
own
not-
photo shoot.
It's not, perfect. This is a tremendous help and minimizes the amount of work that you have to do on the computer. And I would recommend something like this setup if you are doing sculpture or 3D work.
Definitely.
Because that eliminates shadows. I can get in there, take my photos, and then physically rotate the object, leave the camera exactly how it is, rotate the object, 45 degrees, take another photo or 5, rotate it again, take some more. Amy mentioned you probably want 2 to 3 photos from different angles. If you're doing this for personal records, do a 360. Rotate it 45 degrees until you go all the way around. Whatever object you're working with, take as many as you need. But this is a great professional setup. I happen to be using this camera or panel as an example. It's thick, it stands up on its own. If not, you can get small display easels that might help it stand up straight. You can use books or something behind it to prop it up, but you want it to be as straight up and down as possible as well, even in here. Because that's just gonna help with the perspective of the camera and the photograph in your, when you move into the editing process. So that's an example of a professional photo booth in our photo tent with all of our remotes and everything. So I back over there and talk about editing.
Lots of cords.
Yes, lots of cords, lots of extension cords.
They're getting to see a little behind the scenes at the studio today. It's not that
Actually
bad.
better than it's ever been, I think, isn't it? Way better than it's ever been. Because we care about you, Will.
So I wanted to show over here one example of of composition too. So this we might all remember Amy's beautiful fox. So this is the final artwork that is edited, cropped, it's ready to go. So that's ready to be printed or uploaded to a website or whatever it is. This was the raw photo that I took. So you can see the colors match pretty well. That was the white balancing I did in the camera. But you see a little bit of a canvas table that we have as the background. But again, it's a neutral color. I didn't do it in the studio with art supplies and easels and other things in the background. So that made it easier to edit. But you also notice, when I put on some guides on this one, it's not exactly level. And there's some things that you can do in post-production to help with that. And you also see that it has some, like the top of the paperwork got ripped off of the pad. The corner up here is bent up a little bit and it's creating a little bit of a shadow. Those are things that we want to edit out, and we don't want to show those slight imperfections. Not imperfections with the artwork itself, but with how the photo was taken. So even though I took the time to get everything right, there's still little things that you can't always control. So in this photo, I can rotate it a little bit. I'm going to crop the edges down and the sides a little bit. So you're not necessarily seeing the full piece of paper, but you are getting the full artwork.
I'm trying to, the dreaded glare.
Yes.
Yes.
But that goes to show just moving it just a tiny bit.
Yep. While you're there, here's another example of Amy's llama.
I love the llama.
So So you can see this is the raw photograph. And so, you know, I have Amy's actual artwork. I put a white piece of paper underneath it, and you can still see a little bit of the table, but I wanted to create, again, a plain, boring, neutral background, which helps with the editing. And so here's the final one. And you can see my white balance is a little bit off on this photo. So that's something I was able to correct in post-production, in editing, but I based this final one off of the actual artwork,
I'd say that was
not
just like
what
it.
the
Yep.
photograph on the computer looked like.
Yep.
I love that one. He's so cute.
Mama.
Llama llama duck.
Oh no. Now she's done it. It's stuck in my head.
As we move into editing, I have some other to show, but I'll show those in a minute. All right, so editing software, I think I mentioned at the beginning, your big guns are going to be Adobe Photoshop, Camera Raw, and Lightroom. You don't have to use those. They just have a myriad of options as far as fine-tuning things. But I think apps that you can buy, some of the built-in stuff in your phone, it will help with some of the basic composition and editing that you need. Because mostly what we're doing is cropping out what you don't want to see.
Yes.
That's the biggest part of editing, is just cropping out the non-artwork part of the photograph. Excuse me. You don't want to use fancy filters. Again, it's not going to show how, it's not going to accurately display your artwork. You want to remove or minimize the background. Sometimes you want to take it out completely. Sometimes you want it, you might want it on a white background or black or some, flat color. Other times you want no background, so it's just the artwork as your digital photograph or your final image. Some other things that you might need to do when you're editing is adjust rotation. If you want to get really nitpicky, you can adjust the skew, the warp, and the perspective. That's a lot. That gets down to that professional level of selling your artwork. Once you take a photo, if you were looking straight on, if your artwork was tilted back a little bit, it's not going to line up directly. It's not going to be straight line. So
Yep. Looks like a little bit of a trapezoid
yes.
kind of a thing.
Yeah, so I have this, even though I tried to take it as level as possible, you can see this straight line. There's more paper sticking out at the top than there is at the bottom. The perspective's off. It's not just rotated, it's angled a little bit off. And that's something you can fix by playing around with skew, warp, and perspective, especially in Photoshop. That's, I don't know if every editing software has those kind of things, but that is a Photoshop feature that you can nitpick. When in doubt though, just crop off more of the sides. If you have an image like this, where Amy did, and it has a lot of the background color, it's not full of art, you get a little more leeway, a little bit more room to cut in and ultimately, just crop out those inconsistencies or that angle. But in theory, what you want is perfectly level, perfectly straight, sharp, crisp edges in your final piece. And I don't worry too much when I'm editing about sticking to standard sizes. You can always adjust that later based on what you need. If you need to, fill an 8x10, you can add borders, you can add things later, but I don't worry about the size and perspective and the aspect ratio when I'm doing the photographs. I just want to get the artwork to look as good as possible, and you can worry about that a little bit later. Again, use built-in guides and grids, not only in your camera, but also in the Photoshop or whatever software you're using. So I made these grids just by drawing lines, but because they wouldn't print, the guides in Photoshop wouldn't print out. But depending on the software, you can have grids of various sizes to help you make sure that your edges are crisp and straight. They're just little simple guides like that that help you in your final image. And again, it's okay to cut off a little bit of the edges. Even if your artwork does go to the very, very edge, it might be worth cutting off a tiny bit just to get that straight, crisp line. Especially when Ophelia works with us on her Mixed Media Mondays, she does a lot of her work in her journal. And that's hard to get crisp edges. Her journals have been used, the corners, kind of fray up a little bit.
Wavy.
Yes, and you get the spiral from the notebook. If it's not a spiral and it doesn't always fold flat,
What happened?
No, I'm gonna sneeze. I'm
Oh.
trying to see the
She was just
camera.
like, everybody looks, Katie looked at something,
Sorry.
we're like, what? I thought the roof was like leaking or something, that was hilarious.
I was about to sneeze and I
That's
didn't want
okay.
to sneeze on the camera.
I'll just hold these up.
That's not embarrassing at all.
Oh, if Katie's coming back, I can show these examples.
Yeah,
but-
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So these are both considered finished.
Light makes me
completed-
sneeze.
completed artworks. So this one, would be fine to show if you're okay showing that your work was done in a journal. You can see the spiral bounding on the side. You can see it goes off the edges a little bit at the ends. I removed as much as I could that was a distraction and just got down to the basics. But, it's okay to show that spiral. You're working in a journal. I think that's a little bit forgivable. It also depends on your final needs. Here's the same piece of artwork without the spiral and the edges. All I did was crop in just a little bit more, and you can't tell that that was done in a journal. So that is really personal preference and what you are ultimately using it for. So I don't think if Ophelia was going to sell this as a print, she would want the spiral in there, so she might opt for this. But if it's a personal records thing or just showing off what you were working on
Or
that
if
day,
she's, or if
This
she's
is
doing a
gonna be
blog
great.
on her website where she's
Yes.
talking about journaling, you would want to see that.
yes, yeah. So that's just, cropping in on the sides and what you think is relevant for you and your needs. And another example that I wanted to show, I mentioned that Ophelia will do artwork for greeting cards and she'll sell them on Etsy and other places online. So here's an example of some photographs I did for her greeting cards. Notice it's not always just the photograph. In the event that this was used for a card, I wanted to show it on the card itself. It's okay to show the table. Again, it's pretty neutral. There's no paintbrushes or other things, no cats in the background. It's even though it's not just the artwork, it's still non-distracting. I think that's the biggest thing. You don't want anything else in the photograph to take away from your artwork. So even though that's not just the art, you can get away with it. It's good. It works for what we need it to. Don't edit. Back to the editing with your digital files. Don't edit the original file. Make a copy of it.
I'm
Yeah.
laughing because I accidentally did
Done
that
that,
once
yes.
with one of our photography ones for the website. The first time they let me do it. They didn't
Amy doesn't get to edit photos anymore.
It's kind of the same thing with why you take multiple photos. Once you get it and you decide this is the one I'm going to edit, make a copy of it. That way, if anything goes wrong, you make a big mistake and you can't undo anymore, you can go back to that original piece. You still have that. You can start over if you need to. If you decide you cropped off the spirals, but later on you want to show that, you can go back to the original. So make a copy, then edit. Yeah, that helps tremendously. Even if, I don't know, it will be invaluable. You don't need it until you need it, and then,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially if you sell your work and you don't have the original piece to go back to.
Yes.
We've had that happen.
Yeah.
I think it's important to develop a naming system to stay organized. The date is an easy way to do it. Sort things by mediums that you do. If you work in various mediums, find a system that helps you be able to go back and say, oh, hey, we did a fox and an elephant. Let's do that for a fur and feathers coming up. I know where those
Yes.
photographs are because I have an organized labeling system. Everybody has their own system, but if you have one, stick with it. That's going to help you down the road when you have 1,000 photographs and you want to find that one image that you did.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be able to find it a lot easier if you are consistent in your organization. And have a dedicated place to store your artwork. So if it's on your computer, have a folder on your desktop. That's where your artwork goes. Have a backup hard drive dedicated to that. Don't put on your favorite movies and stuff too. Just keep your artwork on there. Hard drives are relatively inexpensive enough that you can get one and dedicate it to your artwork. And also, don't just have it on your computer. Have it on that hard drive as well. Again, one of my favorite sayings is, it's only paranoia until it pays off.
Yes.
I back up our video footage in 3 different places. That seems like paranoia until the computer dies, until the hard drive crashes. You walk in and drop your hard drive, there goes all that footage.
I have 17,457 photos on my phone for that reason.
Wow. Even the
They're not in the
cloud.
cloud.
They're in the cloud, they're on my
In the
computer,
cloud.
and they're there because
Yes.
I'm paranoid.
Yeah, even if you think the cloud's a great backup option, things can happen. Get hacked. Accounts get lost or hacked into.
Yeah.
So there's, back it up. Have at least two,
I don't know what that was.
if not three places that you can store your artwork. And not just the originals, but any edits that you do, your final images. I'm happy with this digital image. Copy that to the hard drive.
Yeah.
Put it online somewhere. And you don't want to just put it on Facebook and then later grab that, save it off of Facebook. That's a lower
Yes.
resolution compressed version of that. So save your originals. They're going to be the highest quality you can get.
And you need to do that because like that one book that there was a competition for the Northlight books for the acrylic 6. Luckily, we still had an image of it that was high resolution because
Mhm.
I didn't take the image and I didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. And thankfully that was done. The work got sold. Then I
Mhm.
wanted to enter it. And then thank goodness somebody had something because they had to be 300 DPI or higher.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. Well, for digital stuff.
Now you
I
do
mean,
though, right?
No,
Yes.
I do, but just make sure that you've got those really high res
Mhm.
copies because you're going to need them for
Yes.
anything that you want to do that's like anything more than just keeping it for your records. If you want to print it for anything, if you want to enter any competitions,
Mhm.
if you
Yeah.
know.
You mentioned Redbubble earlier, they also have pixel and resolution
Mhm.
requirements and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, if in case you can't hear Frida on the side, any type of source where you can upload images to put them on products to sell your work, they have minimum file sizes that you have to match so that they print out with decent quality.
Well, in competitions and contests and stuff like that, a lot of times they'll each have their own
Yes.
requirements for that
Yes,
type of
not
thing.
everybody has the same ones, because
Yeah.
that competition, it was fine for a lower res for just the submission, but then when I made it into it,
Mhm.
then I had to have the higher res for print
Yes.
purposes, so.
And again, if you have a final image that you've edited and you love and you need to adjust that for a contest or something, don't edit that one that you love. Make a copy of it. Label it, whatever image, Jerry's self-portrait contest, and then edit that
Yes.
to those specifications. Because you don't want to have, if you can't undo it, you got to start over.
Yeah.
So
Don't
always
be,
make
don't
a
be an
copy.
Amy.
Well, and always in the highest resolution that's possible,
Yes.
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 just from the concert,
Yes.
contest viewing. But you
Yes,
can send a
so
300
opening those
DPI.
up and then trying to see them when we look at them,
Yeah.
like,
And it used to be back in the day, you could get, the film negatives, or when we shot video on tape, they could always pull out the tapes. In digital, once it's gone, it's gone. Some people
Yep.
save memory cards and write, little notes on them and put them away, but those can fail. Memory cards are inconsistent from
Right.
camera to camera. If you get a new camera and it doesn't read those old ones, what do you do?
right,
So it's easier to just have multiple copies, hard drives, whatever, dedicated to saving those images. And I'll touch on printing just a little bit. That's not something that I have a lot of experience in. But if you're printing these out for your personal records or maybe just to show off, on a smaller scale, your home printer will probably be a decent enough quality. They do make large format printers that hold more colored inks than just the CMYK, the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and larger than 8.5 by 11. But if you shot on a 20 by or painted on a 20 by 30, it may not look as great on an
Right.
8.5 by 11
Right.
piece of paper. So they do make larger format printers. Those are an investment. Sometimes you can rent a space that has it. Get prints made on them. You don't have to own the printer. But if it's just for personal records, your home computer should be fine. Amy and I printed these here today. Show the final one if we're going to do that.
yeah,
And even as high quality as we could, even though the image looks great, there's a white border because the printer ink will not go all the way to the end. So that's just something to consider. And even though that's fine for personal records and you don't want to sell a Giclée, a print with a white border on it unless that's on purpose, but this was not.
right,
This was the limitations of the printer.
yeah, and that's a fancy printer too.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you are doing something for more than just personal records, you also need to consider the material that you're printing on. You want to use some sort of archival material. paper will yellow over time, just like
Mhm.
you know, paint or canvas or anything else,
Mhm.
unless it's archival quality. And also consider the material that you're printing on. They do make canvas type paper for you to print on if you want that canvas look, or if you paint it on canvas, you kind of want to replicate that a little bit.
They make cotton papers that can go through printers.
Mhm.
even,
Yes, yeah.
that are coated to accept the ink,
Mhm.
where you can actually do some of your own prints.
They make all kinds of papers
Yes,
now.
there's
It's
some crazy
insane.
crap.
You can
Yeah.
make fake tattoo papers.
Yes.
You can fake tattoo your art at a festival.
Well,
you
now,
can do your art
I was
tattoo.
gonna say, now I know where I'm gonna go with the next painting.
And when in doubt, ask an artist community. You know, there's people online that have been through this before. There may be somebody in your neighborhood or in your local artist community that you participate in that's printed things out with decent success. So ask around, ask people, search online, see
I
what.
was to say, you can always Google it.
Yes.
There's
that's
so many
always an
people that
option.
ask questions where it's just like, if they took the time, and then we'll wait for weeks, where if you
Mhm.
just Google it, a lot of times, you can have the answer like that.
Yeah, and you can always, you know, take a thumb drive with your images down to your local, you know,
Mhm.
CVS or Target or photo studio that will print them out. You might have less options as far as sizes and, you know, just photo paper, but if that's what you want and that's what you're looking for, that's perfect, that works fine. But if you do want to do a larger format print or different material, search around and see what's in your area, or guarantee there's some websites that you can ship off or upload the digital image and they will send it to you after it's printed. So you have options as far as that goes. I just don't have enough experience to recommend something specifically as far as that goes. But after you're printed, what do you do with it? You have your image. Where do we go from there?
Well, there's any number of things that you can do with it, as far as if you are actually wanting to carry a physical copy to display the artwork. From any of these just very basic, Katie, can you help us with this? Sorry. Let's see, I always catch her when she
Yeah.
walks away, and then she's.
We're trying to sneeze.
I know, well, that, yeah. Any of these very basic ones, like this Stein Design books, they're acid-free, they're presentation books that come in a lot of standard sizes. We grabbed an 8x10 and 11x17. For these, they're a little bit thinner quality, you know, but still relatively durable kind of plastic. They do have a coating on the pages.
Oops.
With the one like this, I would recommend this for, say you're at art festivals. These are very inexpensive, so if somebody takes this and then walks away not thinking, just sometimes, or set some stuff down on it while they're shopping, they pay for something and they pick it all up, stuff happens, it's just reprinting your stuff in, you know, a very low cost to replace these.
And then
Just-
a home printer would work fine for this situation.
Yes, for this situation, that's fine. Just, you know, you could, if you wanna ship these to a couple different people to look at, if clients that are gonna potentially look through commissions, this isn't as big of a deal. Now, the 11x17 is perfect for, we didn't end up getting one printed out. What I would do with this is take one of these images that's an 8x10, once stuff is sold, or if you're wanting to keep this as an inventory catalog, you can put this on the larger paper, you know, size that up, have all your copy with what the code, whatever codes he was talking about, having a photo record with
Yes.
the codes. When I do artwork, I do codes, a different code for each month of that year, and then it ends with that year. So I know when the work was made, I know what's first, second, third, you know, if I produce 10 things, 12 things, 20 things in a month, you know, from that A, blah, 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 2018, what that is. Then I can put the medium, the size, the price. I can put whether it's framed or unframed. Then if somebody goes to buy that, I can even reprint this with the owner's name and their information, so that I still have that and I know where it's at, rather than keeping it separate from that record. Then if people want to see what type of work that you've got that's out there,
Mhm.
and who the collectors are that it's gone to, you've got that record just separate to be able to keep your work with.
Along those lines, something I forgot to mention in the storing and stuff of your artwork, once you put things on a hard drive or whatever, I always like to keep a text document that keeps some of that information in there. So not just about the artwork, but also about the photo settings that you took. So you can recreate that if you need to. I shot it at this ISO, this shutter speed with these sort of lightings, and this is a little bit more about, you know, the actual artwork. It was, you know, watercolor with Turner watercolor, whatever it is. Keep a little a digital text document with that information as well.
That's a great idea, because a lot of times different mediums perform a little bit differently under lights and all that, so then you know what's worked in the past to maybe quick dial it faster to retake those images.
Yes.
So that's a great idea. So that's just your very basic setup. Something like this is a nice little book that's kind of got a padded leather-like cover. Again, with kind of the basic sleeves that the artwork can fit in and out. There's black paper in it, it is acid free, so it's got some backer, so even if you wanted to put other things or a smaller cut out piece of paper in there like that. Now the one thing about these ones that we've shown so far, you can't add additional pages to it. Which that's something, it is what it is with the lower price point. You can buy another one easily to fill. Some of these actually have additional pages, and we'll look at those in a minute. These are the Itoa, let me grab this just so I know. Again, the little bit larger size if you're wanting to keep additional information with it, or even like maybe if you're working in a landscape setting, that's gonna give you a little bit longer length.
Yes.
But I mean, think about it, because not all, you know, things aren't always exactly like an 8x10
Yes.
and scaled up. So that gives you the ability to do that, or even you could print two pieces together on the same page.
Yeah.
These have a very clear kind of they call it a polyglass crystal pocket. You can really see this is clearer. You can see that this is kind of the next step up. They're acid free. It's a heavier.
Let me see if I can get the glare off of it.
Yeah, it's a heavier binding.
Maybe.
Than the Go See design ones. Acid free, archival safe. It's got, you know, the dual pages on the front and the back, so it lays nice and flat. I mean, that's the nice thing about all these. They lay flat, so it's easy for having out at a table as a presentation. And this is a little bit heavier duty, so if you're gonna be doing a little bit more traveling or something like that, where this is really gonna be open and shut a lot more, maybe upgrading to this portfolio would be kind of the, you know, advantage. It'd be advantageous. See where I'm with that? Then we go up where you can actually add additional inserts with these. This is their multi-ring portfolio, but still with that same very clear, more of a, can you see with that? Do I need to? But you can keep adding inserts. So it gives you the ability to, you know, it does lay flat with the binder, but it gives you that ability to add more pages. The further you go in that book, you know, you could really, and there's a decent spine to it, so you could actually, you know, probably go with 2 to 3 additional inserts with that if you're printing it on thin photo paper. So that gives you a lot more room and a lot more space, and then you can feel that that's a little kind of even heavier.
Yeah, a little more than this.
Kind of the next
this
step
isn't
up.
too-
No, that's still pretty
Little
sturdy.
flex- yeah.
It's just
Just
slightly,
that.
yes, kind
Step
of
up.
a little bit, has a little bit of a texture, looks a little fancier, but they make those inserts for all that, and these do come in, and there's much more sizes than these. These are just kind of, I picked 2 very just basic sizes, the 8x10, or these are 8.5 by 11
By 11.
that the Itoa makes. So that's your traditional, just straight up printer sheet. We just trimmed these down a little bit for this. If you're wanting to take something where it's kind of more of the old traditional style, reminds me that, did you have the padded binder in school where it had the
Trapper Keeper.
The Trapper Keeper.
It's very much like a Trapper Keeper. Zipper on the outside, so you can put pens and things like that in it. A little business card,
yes.
you know, you can fit some other things near. This is like velvety velour, feel that. It's luxurious. Then it's got your inserts as well that you can kind of add to. But it lays flat, but then it zips shut. So it's not gonna, you know, that helps with a little bit of wear and tear on some
Yeah.
of these if you don't have a really safe way to carry them. And it's got this
Yes.
for travel, so it can hold
And
those
it's great about
down.
the zipper too. If you accidentally put, it in your bag upside down, things don't fall out the top.
Yes,
So
yeah,
it's
because
secure.
Yeah, because with these, it is loose in the top, so if you did have it and it's really jostling around,
Yes.
you could open something up and find your pictures that you've carefully printed and planned for in a jumble. So it's just another kind of an additional one that it's Martin and Weber, it's the Paris portfolio. So there's a way to carry prints of all these things if you want a physical copy for it, which, we're talking about, you can use these photos for anything
Yeah.
that you're taking. And hopefully people understand now that there is a need to, record your artwork,
Yes.
and get the best possible image, because especially everybody's always the biggest naysayer of their own artwork versus anybody else, and people always think, oh, it's not good enough yet, it's not this, it's not that. You just don't know what you may not be satisfied with. Other people may be more than happy to buy,
Yes.
or want prints of it, or want it on products.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they can't afford the original, but they would love to have it on a phone case, or a throw pillow, or
Yeah.
you just never know. So it's really important that you document all of your work. You never know when these additional sources of income.
Mhm.
I mean, it can come down to, if you're thrifty, you find a photo setup, whether it's your phone, whether it's a camera like you've shown, whether you want to go to the extremes of even the whole photo
The photo
setup
booth
there. You can go from just keeping this to yourself and having a copy for your own record
I keep one in my car.
to making a business out of
Yeah.
this and selling it. It used to be you had to sell the rights to use it to a greeting card company, or to this or to that. Anymore with the internet now, you can market stuff on your own and have the money coming back to you in your own hot little pocket,
Mhm.
without that additional overlay of paying to have 500 cards printed that then you sell.
Yes.
You can, people can one source it,
Mhm.
and you don't have to pay for any of that additional stuff. Yes, Frida.
A question that actually came up earlier, do you have a recommendation for the largest resolution you should use to prevent people from stealing your artwork, essentially? So if people are putting their images on their website,
Yes.
should they
On a
stay at a
market.
certain size or smaller so that people can't take that image and then?
Okay, so what Frida's asked about is, what steps can you take either digitally,
Mhm.
with what size image you upload, whether it's a watermark? What
Yes.
can you do to keep
Yes.
people from then going on your site, if you've got like a website, and taking your art and stealing it?
Yes, so I think two ways around that. I think probably the more foolproof way is to watermark your images, and that is done in Photoshop, or in that editing process. You can, if you have a signature, a digital signature, or something that kind of is somewhat translucent, that kind of goes over the artwork, either one big one in the middle or small ones all around. It does take away a little bit from the display of the artwork on the website, but it will prevent somebody from using it anywhere, or they'll be using it with your watermark, so at least you're getting some credit from that. Another option would be to have the full resolution, highest resolution possible, available on your computer or uploaded somewhere, but on your website maybe just show the smaller version of that. Only show a small image with that 72 DPI, that's pretty low resolution, that you can't blow up and print a copy of that. So that may help as far as displaying the smaller resolution or the watermarked versions.
Well, and there's certain ways on
That's
social
right.
media that you can disable right clicking, so
Yes.
people can't right click and save.
And that's, in fact, I think, and what everything that I've been reading on kind of marketing your artwork, a much better thing of doing either a watermark
Yeah.
that isn't all inclusive, where it's covering. I've seen some watermarks where it's like, why did you even bother?
Yeah.
Because it might as well have had jail bars,
Yeah.
and you can't really focus on the image and the quality of the image, but you also don't want to distort it so much where people can't, have it high res but so distorted with that where people can't see it. It would be far better to employ those type of situation when
And-
they can't then make a copy of it.
Copyright your art, so if they do
Yes.
steal it, you have legal recourse.
Yes.
Right. Well, that's why you take these images
Yep.
and you've got actual
You got proof.
digital proof and physical proof to be
Yes.
able to defend yourself.
And if you want to go that step to the actual legal copywriting of it, it's not a complicated process. You know, just search U.S. copyright. They have a website. You make an account. Essentially, you would send them, maybe not the original, but a digital image of your artwork. Depending on what you're copywriting, you know, it costs $35 to $55, and how many you're doing. It takes a couple weeks, and they send you a certificate of copyright. So then you legally own the copyright for that, and if somebody does infringe upon that, you can, if you want to, take legal recourse.
Which we've talked about in one of our other episodes about copywriting and copyright law. And from how it's written, as long as you're putting even a copyright, just a logo on there, you are actually physically putting a copyright on that. You can, at any time, as long as you've got that digital copy or something, you can backtrack it, as long as you've got the proof of the date and all that.
Yes.
So if you don't, you know, if you're just starting out and you don't have $50, it's a lot to spend.
Sure.
If you're selling artwork for $5-10 grand, that's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But
I think there's a way you can do it where you're copywriting all images that go, like say you're putting on your website.
Yes.
You can copyright all images that are taken from that website as one
Yes.
big group.
And that,
But they gotta talk to a lawyer about that.
Yeah, go to the copyright website,
Yes.
poke around there. It's a little bit of legal speak, but it's easy enough to kind of get through it if you just kind of focus and take some
Worth
time to
it.
read it. Yeah, and
Definitely worth it.
protects you.
Are there any other
Any
questions that
questions?
we've got? What we've got, we'll hear live.
Do
I'm
you
guilty.
use,
Yes.
do you use a grade card for setting your white points?
I do that in video. We have a white balance sheet that, you know, kind of set up and say, hey, camera, this is white for our settings. I do not use it necessarily for photography. I prefer to dial it in manually. But there are some people that do that. They have special cards that you can get them that fold up in your pocket or whatever, that have a color chart on them and kind of say, this is true white, this is true black, this is gray, this is, you know, all the colors. So, and that's a good way to calibrate your white balance essentially. So-
Now, okay, yeah, but in saying that, then, once you're taking the digital image and then your computer is reading it, you're still limited to what your screen and the color settings in your screen allow.
Sure.
It's not necessarily going to match that, so it almost seems like that could potentially be an unnecessary step, because as long as you've got the physical artwork there with you as
Yes.
you're doing the color correction on the screen, which even that's still gonna be, it may not be how it reproduces on a printer.
Yes.
As far as, you know, it's just do you think eyeballing it would be better with the actual artwork when you go to do that, or do you think there is some truth to using a card like that?
There's definitely benefits if you're learning, but I think, you know, once you get some practice in there, you can dial it in manually. Just see with your eye what looks right. Trust your instincts in your eye, and especially if it's your artwork, you know.
This is
you know,
very true.
What your if what's in the camera is what you painted, what you put down.
That's a good point.
Just make sure you get a proof if you're gonna sell the prints.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. A proof for the prints, definitely.
Any other questions?
Anything
I
else?
think we've plowed through everything.
That's
at this point.
awesome. It's very, very helpful.
Everyone's a professional now.
Yeah, they are, yes, and we expect to see some digital imagery, like, what do you think? Can you give them a week to master it?
You got it. And like Amy said, I will send her my notes and she will put those up, so you don't have to remember what every f-stop is and what every ISO, what that all means. It will be available for
Yep.
you, so use that as a guide if you'd like.
And in following through with those notes, it made sense to me, so if it made sense to Amy, the rest of you should be able to figure it out quite easily. Yes,
Yes.
Sally?
And if you look at the comments that were on YouTube, there were quite a few pros that were also giving extra tips.
Yeah.
Ooh,
As we went
yes.
along, and they had
Awesome.
some awesome.
Yeah, so everything that I went over is just kind of just the basics. You can dive way deeper into anything I discussed.
Mhm.
And for anybody who left comments on how to do that and extra tips, thank you so much.
Yeah, but this was basic, your beginner
Yes.
barrage into these
Artwork.
additional things that you have to do
Yeah.
to really stay current and be competitive.
Yes.
Other than, it's one thing to be an artist and do the art, it's another thing to then take on the ability to self-market, which this is part of it.
Mhm.
So, and it's, you know, you can hire somebody to do it, or thankfully, I've got Like, Will makes you look, well, no, I mean, that's, one of the delightful happenstances of this job is being able to work with you and you being there for, this for me, so.
I'm not an
Thank
artist
you.
when it comes to painting, so
No,
maybe it's
you
stuff in
are
the
an artist for
canvas,
this,
I'll leave it
yes.
in the camera.
Yes,
It's good to me.
definitely. Was there another question? Oh, she's done.
Do you want to tell them about our current giveaway we're having on the page before we sign off? We're giving one away. We're giving one away on our
Oh,
Facebook page
well,
this week.
We'll see, okay. So if you guys have been watching Facebook Live, you know that we showed the Soho plein air pochade box before, and it was on the oils episode because I brought the box, and it was the prototype, and I was very stingy about, if anybody kind of looked at it kind of cross-eyed, just kind of, get away from the box.
Yeah.
Stay away. Because I love it. It's in production now, it's out, it's on the website, we have them, all the upgrades that we asked for were done, they're fantastic. Mine does not have this, so hopefully this one will disappear so that I have it. Mine did not have the paper towel holder that clips in, that you can keep in the box, pull out, it just sticks over the side. Mine didn't have these handy things, which make it so that you can carry up to 6 9x12 panels in this dry. You don't want to cram them in there wet because that's going to be a problem. Up to 2 wet for 9x12.
Yeah.
But with these handy doodads, you can go down to an 8x10. You can go down to what is it,
It's like-
6x8?
I think 3x5
Is it
or
3x5?
6x8.
It might be 5x7.
That's what it is.
You can add these together to go down to little itty bitty size. I think this one takes it to 8x10. This one takes it to 6x8.
Yeah.
Both of these take it
Yeah,
to 5x7.
there you go.
So you've got the ability to paint with multiple sizes, but then remember, if you saw the box and know how much I liked it, the beauty of it is 9x12 is what it carries in the box because of the box size. The one thing that nobody has that does these pochade boxes, all the major brands and everybody's seen on the show, Amy's Favorite Things last year showed another brand that we carry that I'm not bad mouthing them, it's just one of the things that they don't do that would be wonderful, because I don't know how many times I've cut myself on the external easel. This adjusts so you can paint from little itty bitty like this
Pretty darn big.
to that large.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you're gonna have to bring along another carrying device for a wet panel or canvas from there, but this gives you the ability to paint in just a crap ton of sizes. And I said it and I go by it, a crap
Yeah.
ton of sizes for being on kind of on the road and portability. And I think my original one, did my original one have the, I think my original one had the,
I have no idea at this point.
well, I think it was stained.
Yeah, we changed.
And I did not like that, and I said it's gonna get too hot and it's gonna make paint dry quickly. They took the stain off the inside, so that was fantastic. You can just fit a ton of things in there, and again,
Whoop, whoop.
you actually have that little basement to put your panels in. So those are in stock, and we're giving one away, and how can they be
So we're doing
eligible to?
a like, answer, and win on our Facebook page. It's on the very top of our Facebook page. We're doing it for our Artist Appreciation end of summer event that we're doing for the next week. So all you have to do is go find that post. It's pinned to the very top of our page. Like the question that's in the comment, or like the post, answer the question that's in the comment, and you're entered to win.
That's awesome. Oh, and the brush holder too.
It's got lots. That's
The other thing that on other brands, you have to pay for those sides to come out for the easel extensions, as they call them. You can put brushes across on this or use that as an extra mixing area, which would be what I would do because I usually have paint everywhere.
Yeah.
And then it just sticks to the outside. I know. So slick. So, you can try to win one, and hopefully I think we should have one when we do Amy's favorite things in the fall to give away to for my birthday.
We'll
So
see.
I'll see whose arms we can twist.
I'm surprised we got one to give away
I know.
this week.
Or how many I can damage between now and
Yeah.
Oh, a scratch and dent. We can give that away. No.
And if you don't win it, it's only $129.99.
Yes.
And It's coupon eligible.
Okay, so
Here's a-
yes, $129.99 with all these
Right.
food ads with it, and still coupon eligible, yes.
If you read all the way to the bottom of the description on the picture, there might be a little coupon code down in the comments of the
Oh, even better.
A little secret tip for
I know.
secret tip.
for
I
anyone
know.
watching today.
So again, the Soho plein air pochade box.
Shade.
It's
Fancy.
finally here, so that's very exciting.
Yes.
So, all right, well, I guess that wraps up episode 66. Will, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
As
for having
always,
me.
we get the delight of having you after hours.
I'm lucky
So
I'm allowed back.
That was fantastic. Again, if you didn't see that episode with him, the gilding, very well worth the watch, and the chocolate's fantastic. So, all right,
So-
well, next week we are doing, we're doing the oil painting
Oh yeah.
episode. I don't remember what we actually termed it as far as
Alla
the.
Prima.
I love Prima.
Oh, we're gonna be doing alla prima painting with Charvin oils, and we're actually gonna try to see if we can bust out a small painting, or at least how you start with alla prima painting. What that means, I'm not gonna tell them because that's just gonna be.
Sounds
they have to
delicious.
watch. Someone's.
It's
I won't
Pasta primavera.
recommend eating it, but it does sound, yeah, sounds like some fancy pasta or something.
Yeah, al dente.
Yes, al dente. Alla prima, yes. So tune in next week where we'll be doing that, and we'll be painting live. It'll be a demo. So all of you that are always like, show me how to do it, we're gonna do it. So, and that'll be 67 next week. And I think the week after that, we're doing mat cutting with the guy from Logan Mats.
Ooh.
So that ought to be interesting. All you ever wanted to know about learning to cut mats, but we're afraid to ask. So, so thank you guys for watching. Thank you for hanging in there, Facebook, where they had to wait a little bit
Yes.
for YouTube. We appreciate it. Again, any of these portfolios that we showed, JL66 in the search bar, that'll Yes, not to use that flash. That's